Hey everyone, welcome back to Grünstadt episode 2, and in today's episode, as promised, we're going to be doing, or rather redoing, the city's metro system. And we did have a metro system, but it was really, it was made within an hour, and it was really sort of haphazard, and I didn't like it that much. And especially after my trip to Europe, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm actually Ukrainian, and so I really like Kiev's metro system, and I really wanted to do something like that in my city, so that's what we're going to be doing. So the first thing that we had to take care of is the actual depot, since, that's where all our trains are going to be coming out of. Normally you'd have one on each end of each line, at least that's what the metro system in Kiev has, but I decided just to go with the one since that's not completely necessary and I didn't want to make a ton of them. We already had one, as you can see, in the top left right now. It was basically a Toronto subway depot for the TTC, and I had like this big turnaround, as you can see right there, with a whole bunch of Biskupihausen's subway trains. They were New York subway trains, but of course we're doing the whole Kiev thing, so I wanted to redo it. And this yard is based on the Overhaul metro yard in Overhaul, Kiev. So it's spelled in English Obolon. If you want to take a look at it, it has like it's like this white building, and it also has 4 sections, I believe, and it's like arched on the top, and it has these really nice blue doors with the yellow sort of chevron pointing down, just like on the doors of the actual trains. And the trains, by the way, are by Alex_by or Alex by. They're the Kiev version of the Metro Wagonmash 81717/81714, and they're cool trains. They're sort of the one that's sort of characteristic of the metro because they're really iconic. They're really sturdy and reliable trains built by Metro Wagonmash, which it was a very it's basically the company that made all the metros for the many Soviet countries. So yeah, that's that. And like I said, yeah, this depot is based on the one in Overhaul. And so what I'm going to be doing, because I want this to be at least, as realistic as I can get it, so I removed the double tracks that were there in the first place, and with Move It, by the way. Move It has this new feature. Actually, it was an old feature that Sam or whoever makes that mod brought back, and you can select nodes in a station with Move It. And so or not just a station, like a building. So I selected the nodes, I removed the double tracks, and we replaced them with the single metro tracks, and then we're going to be doubling them and putting down 2 sets of tracks. So we have quite a bit of versatility, is that the word? And we're also going to be putting tracks in those middle doors because, tracks would be going there too. Now, if you don't know what mod this is that gives me access to all these tracks and above ground metro, it's called the Metro Overhaul mod, or MOM. And it's made by a whole bunch of people. They're really talented. It's a great mod. It's a game changer, and it basically adds a whole new transportation type. And it does have a few issues with it. For example, like you can see that instead of it being like a texture, the gravel, like for example, if you have ploppable asphalt or any of the ploppable surfaces by Ronix, if you move that around, you're moving around the object. The texture doesn't move it with it. It's just sort of projected on top of it. That's not how it is with this, because it's a separate texture. It's not using the in-game gravel texture. It moves around with the mesh, and so it creates really weird Z-fighting, which is basically where you have the texture flickering. It creates stretched textures, all these problems that wouldn't be there. So yeah, there is issues with it, but it's still a great mod nonetheless. And of course, you also have different metro types. There's the classic style, the modern style. Right now I'm using the modern style because it has the nice concrete ties, but yeah, if you're going for something like New York or Chicago, then there is the classic style available to you. So what I'm making here is a tunnel entrance for our underground portion of the metro, because we will have, of course, the underground metro, and we will have the elevated or overground portion, because it's nice to see the actual metros, I think. And yeah, so it's basically, I'm just creating a double track, and I'm just out of single tracks, obviously, because basically I want to have the tunnels as separate like tracks. I don't want it to be, the single network of just the double tracks together. I want it to be separate tracks, so I can basically, whatever, I don't know, it's just how I want to do it. And that's what I'm doing. And then what we're going to be doing is creating an actual yard, because it's not that simple. We need to connect all those tracks that are going into the depot into those two that are going into the tunnel, as well as two that will be going to our elevated line. If you're planning on doing something like this, then you will definitely need to move it, because it's absolutely impossible to create a decent yard with proper switches and just connections without having move it. And I had to use it quite a bit, because I had to actually lower portions of track, since just to reduce the amount of clipping, because it was sort of getting unbearable and really distracting. Like, if you looked at the yard and then you moved the camera even the slightest bit, the whole thing would just explode in a flurry of flickering textures, which obviously is something that you don't want. But like I said, move it kind of saved my ass, so yeah, that was pretty good. You will need to move it if you are going to do something like this. And yeah, I just sort of did that for every one of those like depot sections, and I connected it to these tracks over here. And there are a few portions that we're gonna do later. Like there's a I don't know what it would be called. So like basically in Russian, this main depot is the elektrodepot, which is like the, I guess, electric depot, and then there's a moto depot, which is sort of like a motor depot. Maybe they do inspection like on the motors of the train, or something to do with the wheels, I don't know. But basically there's going to be another little sort of like depot thing that the trains can go through, and so some of the tracks will go there, and then there's going to be a few tracks that sort of just go off to the side, just some abandoned lot. There seem to be quite a few of those. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I sort of copied from the depot. I'll definitely leave a link to it, because if this is something you're interested in, that's definitely a depot you might want to look at. But there are a lot in like Toronto and New York. There's a ton of them, so you could always do that. But because I'm using the Kyiv metros, I thought, why not actually do a depot from Kyiv. Now, what you might notice is that sometimes the third rail doesn't line up perfectly. It's not on the right side, because in City Skylines, if you upgrade something to a one-way road, or if you just, you right-click on the road and you change the direction of it, it'll sort of flip the actual mesh, and then you might notice, like for roads, for example, like street lamps will change sides. And that's what happens here too, because the third rail is part of the mesh. It flips, and it can be on the wrong side. And to fix that, because on the two-way track, you can't really change direction since it's two-way, you upgrade it to one-way, then you right-click until it lines up with the rest of the two-way tracks, and then just upgrade it back to two-way, and the third rail will hold its position. And you can see right here, along with move it, I'm moving the segments so that we get really nice, smooth turnouts. And it looks really nice in the end, because then you have this like perfect, consistent third rail. And then, of course, we switch to doing the elevated portion, which is something that I really wanted, because then we actually get to see our trains above ground. It's like this really nice thing sort of going on in the background of the city. I don't know, it's a nice sort of feature, and at the same time, it's great, because this is sort of in the city. I want trams and metro to be the main thing that people use. And like I said, this is both for aesthetic reasons and because it actually reduces traffic. We want less cars, because it's just, you don't want traffic in your city. It sucks, come on. I knew the general layout, I guess, that I wanted the metro system to take. I want it to be sort of like this horizontal thing, and then I have the underground lines going in different ways, whatever. And so I had to basically delete a whole bunch of buildings from the blocks that the metro was cutting through, because this is a new thing. We didn't plan in advance for this to be here. This is something that I wanted after we did the downtown overhaul. So yeah, I probably should have planned that, but it's too late now. So I deleted that, and then of course some of the roads here, they either have trees or street lamps that are sort of poking through the actual track. So I needed to fix that by basically upgrading the road to and then changing the settings with network skins to either remove lamps, make them smaller, remove trees, stuff like that. And I think in the cinematics even there might still be like one lamp that I forgot to remove, and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, if that's probably something you have to look out for. Unless of course you want it to be the 12 meters tall, which is such an unrealistic height. Like if you've ever driven under a highway overpass that's 12 meters above you, you can see how big of a space that is. It's insane. You don't want it to be like that. In fact, it probably should be 6 meters, but I decided to go with 9 meters because it's just easier to work with. And then I started sort of doing some details after putting down all the tracks and everything. I put down these Russian, or I guess Moscow metro signs, just because there weren't any Kiev metro signs on the workshop, and I didn't have the time to make any because this is already late, and I still have so much stuff to do, not just City Skylines, but like personal stuff. And yeah, details. And then back to this, I had to add a crossover over there because I didn't make a turnaround at the end of the station, which I did later. I added, I think, 2 more stations, and I added a big loop to turn around for the trains, so they don't have to, there's no diamond interchange, they just go around. Now that big orange building that you just saw over there, before I finished with the lines, it's actually a metro hub, and I placed it down in the downtown revamp episode, and it's great because it connects one of our underground lines with our overground lines, and we don't have any other connections like that in the system. We don't have any more I don't know how to call it, like hubs. We don't have anything like that because the way I placed the stations and the way I just planned the system out, it didn't warrant anything like that. But yeah, and there you can see the depot with the finished track placement and everything, almost finished. I still have to have some tracks go off. But yeah, here's the trains that I was talking about. They're really nice, and obviously they're going too fast, partially because this is sped up footage and partially because the speed limit is either like 80 or it's 100. So I changed that to 40, and I don't remember, but I might have I changed it to 20. I wanted them only to go 20 kilometers an hour in this area because that's like a more reasonable speed. You wouldn't have them speeding through this entire area. They go slowly as they switch across the tracks, and then they'd speed up as they get onto their line. Sorry if I'm talking too much or just too quickly for some of you. I'm really trying to get as much info packed into as little time as possible because there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of footage that I didn't even add because I didn't have the time to, because I'm trying to keep this under 20 minutes, which it is just 20 seconds under. Something that I forgot to mention because I was talking, we put down an underground station there. I just wanted to show that I do have an underground portion, and it was a station from the Moscow Metro. I don't remember what it was. It might have actually been Park Kulture. It's like Park of Culture, I guess, in English. So that's pretty cool. Thought I might mention that. And then what we're doing here is we're creating the tunnel entrance. I think I already said that I made it, but here we're actually making it nice and make it look realistic. I used the retaining walls. It's like this thin retaining wall network on the workshop. It's really popular. Everyone uses it. And I used that on the sides of the track to make it look like it's going into the tunnel, right? The track, and it has these nice supports on the side. It looks like a real tunnel entrance, basically, is what I'm getting at. And then I used Ronix's ploppable grass to sort of cover up the sides where the ground is sunken in, because it looks pretty bad like that. You don't want, that's not a realistic tunnel entrance when you have these massive cliffs on each side. I wish there was a way to overcome that, like, so you could just set the network to, I guess, not force the ground to be like that, but there isn't, unfortunately, so we're just dealing with that. Alright, that was a lot of stuff to fit in, but I think we can calm down now. Basically, yeah, that's the tunnel entrance, and then we have to move it to sort of fit to the side of the tracks, and that's it. We're going to be done with that, and it looks really great. I used a ton of ploppable grass because those cliffs are pretty big and were really annoying. But yeah, in the end, it looks great. You can use this sort of approach for making tunnels in so many different ways. Like, I have the tunnel that goes under the cargo ramp in the airport. If you haven't seen that, just take a look at that episode. It's actually might be in the city. I don't know if I even covered that, to be honest. But I have this tunnel basically in the airport that goes under the cargo ramp, and I did the same thing. It's this like nice tunnel, and then you have the retaining walls on the side, and then it actually goes into the tunnel. And yeah, it looks like a real tunnel, and it looks great, and that approach is really nice because it's simple and effective. Now, here is that motor depot, or moto depot, that I mentioned earlier. It's like this skinny little building with tracks coming into it and then leaving out the end and sort of going into a yard. So yeah, it's exactly what I did. I added tracks, and this building was perfect because it had two entrances, and it was just the right color, and it just was exactly what I was looking for. So I made it into a procedural object by just clicking convert into procedural object, and it's great because now the building doesn't have any requirements, doesn't need a road connection, it doesn't need fire service. It's perfect. So if you don't want a building to function but you need it there for aesthetic reasons, procedural objects is great. And I also used it for using prop versions of the metro train in the yard, and you'll see it pretty soon. Basically, I use mod tools to convert the vehicle into, to export the mesh to the asset editor, and then from there I made it into a prop, but the texture wasn't showing up right, and then procedural objects fixed all of that somehow, and it looked, so yeah, I just did that. So that's pretty much the end of this episode. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Today was the metro system, and I really enjoyed making it. I don't know, it was super fun, and I'm really glad how everything turned out. So please do let me know what you think in the comments, because I hope a lot of people find this useful. If you're new to the channel, then consider subscribing, because this is what I do. I really like it, and I'd love to share that with more people. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See you next time.